you're planning a pool in 2026, you've probably already figured out, or at least observed, that pool pricing is tricky, maybe even confusing at times. With different pool types, different materials, different features, different site conditions, every single backyard seems to want to play by its own rules, and of course, every design is subjective to the preferences of every homeowner. So we're going to break through all of this. Today's guest, Jason Hughes, lives in the world of in-ground pool design and installation every day. He's been a part of thousands of projects, and he knows exactly how the decisions you, as the homeowner, make throughout the buying and installation process can have an impact on the final cost or investment of the project you're planning for your backyard. Together, we're going to walk through several backyard setups, from simple, clean installation designs to full-on resort-style outdoor living spaces. And we're going to talk about what they might actually cost to have installed in 2026. We're going to walk through features that drive the price up, elements that don't matter as much as people might think, and smart ways to stretch your dollar without cutting the ultimate design that you want. I'm Christian with River Pools. Welcome to the Pool Guide Podcast. Okay, before we talk actual prices, there's something really important you need to understand: how your builder thinks. Because the mindset of your builder will affect every single number you'll see during your research and buying process.
Yeah,
How do you
and
check all those things?
another way to state this would be, one approach is, from the pool builder standpoint, one approach is we're going to think about everything on the front end. It's all going to be on your site plan that you receive and sign off on before the project starts. It's all going to be in your contract. We're going to select materials, square footages. These things can change. They do change, but we want to do all this work on the front end. We want to begin with the end in mind. That's one mindset. The other mindset is, let's just get this started, and we're going to change order through this whole process. And you can imagine which one of those is a better customer experience. The change orders can lead to surprise cost. They can lead to lack of forethought about the project holistically before it begins. So, those are two fundamentally different things. And I think as a pool buyer, you need to try to figure out which side the people you're working with fall into. And then the ones that are going to trend more towards change orders, and when I hear change order, I just think surprise cost. If they tend that way, you almost have to force them to kind of give you what you need. But you have to know how to do that. So,
So once you understand the builder's mindset, the next question becomes, why do prices sometimes swing so wildly from bid to bid? Here's how that $20,000 difference might be adding up.
Well, I will tell you this, Christian, that this will happen multiple times a year in Virginia, where one of the designers will be working with a potential customer, and they'll have invested some time with them to the point where, they've got a design, they have a proposal that includes everything in that design. I mean, we're talking, like 8 to 20 hours of time invested. There's a good, strong relationship there. And then this customer will come back and say, look, I really love you guys. You're awesome. You've been very professional. But we're getting a bid that's the same thing, and it's $20,000 less than you guys. And I just don't feel like, I can't seem to overcome that $20,000. That means there's obviously good rapport if somebody's comfortable enough to say that. Well, here's what happens from there. And here's what's interesting is what they will say is, okay, if it's 20,000 and it's apples to apples, then honestly, you should probably just go with them if you feel good about it. But I'd be happy to run through the proposal with you. And then a lot of times people are willing to do that. And I'm telling you, every single time that happens, as they go through line by line and stack everything up, there's really not a substantive difference. In fact, sometimes, like our company, it might be a little bit less. So how does that happen? That's the question. So how does somebody think there's a $20,000 delta when there's not. And this isn't speaking from the sake, this isn't coming from a River Pools, Virginia, standpoint. This is like, this happens all over the place. And it happens, the same thing happens with pool installers all the time. How does it happen? I think there's several things. Now, first thing is the two designs that are being proposed usually are not the same thing. So one might have a lot more options. It might have more patio, retaining wall, you name it. Whatever it is, they're not actually apples to apples. So they actually have good numbers. All the things are included, but they're just not the same thing. So that's one. Another example would be a case where they might have two very similar designs or packages, but the pricing's not all disclosed. So what that might look like can be a pool installer, and this happens. A pool installer might say, well, I'm just making this up. Dirt hauling off your site is included in the base package. And then in the fine print, you read, well, it's up to $1,000 allowance. Or electrical work might be included, but it's only including what it takes to wire the pump and filter system at that location. We're not responsible for running the wire from your panel to that location. Or it might be, you need patio. We're going to include 300 square feet of patio. Every other square foot of patio is going to be X amount of dollars. Same thing with the retaining wall. So it's kind of like it's in there, but it's not really in there. And more times than not, that's what we find, is that all of it's just actually not in there. So if you take and you do the math and you end up at the bottom line, it's like, well, it's the same thing. Because truth be told, most contractors, most pool builders are very competitive. There's not really a secret sauce here. We all kind of get the same materials. We buy from the same, more or less places. There's some differences here and there, but by and large, margins are very similar, costs are very similar. So there shouldn't be a $20,000 delta. So anyway, that's kind of that's how I've seen that happen and come to pass in the real world.
Now let's take a step back and establish a baseline for 2026. Because no matter what you build, every budget starts with the type of pool you choose. How would you answer the question about how much a vinyl liner or a concrete pool might cost for 2026?
Yeah, vinyl liner and concrete. So you have three types of pools, essentially. Vinyl liner pools, fiberglass pools, concrete pools, also called gunite pools or plaster pools. They're all basically the same thing, made of the same stuff. So there are general pricing differences between them. So vinyl liner is typically the less expensive. Fiberglass is usually in the middle of the range, although it can be more or less than concrete depending on the market. And concrete in most areas around the country is going to be the most expensive option. So to get into a little more detail, vinyl liner pool, and we can only talk in ranges here because we're addressing a nationwide audience, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So a vinyl liner pool might come in somewhere between the $60,000 and $85,000 range. Fiberglass pool might come in the $80,000 to $150,000 range. Concrete pool could be in the most likely probably in the $80,000 to $200,000 range, although it could be, this could swing either way depending on the market. And that's what's so interesting about our country. And it's just so dynamic in terms of from market to market because there's different factors at play.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those factors because, again, those ranges, it's sort of funny when you see ads on TV or on social media, you can get a pool package for $75,000 but really, what does that really include? What does it not include? So let's talk about some of the things that can, typically it moves the number up. It rarely moves the number down, but what are some of those major components there?
Yeah, it's a great one. I mean, this is probably the first watch out, I would say. And by the way, we're not painting our industry in a negative light in any way. Our profession, we have great people in our industry, but just like any industry, there's going to be people that are, going to operate on the side of being a little bit more loose with their business ethics. So, and those are the situations we're trying to prevent from happening. Let's say, I guess the question is it true that, let's say you see an ad for, $70,000 for a fiberglass pool or $60,000 for a fiberglass pool. Is it true that you could get that? And the answer is yes, of course, that is possible. That is true. But from our perspective in Virginia, our approach isn't really like, we're not going to kind of throw the cheapest, most stripped down option. We're going to really, from the very beginning of this conversation about pricing, we're going to talk about what's realistic, and we're going to talk about what our average customer spends. So yes, you could start somewhere in the 70s or 80s, or even we had one come in the 60s actually, just last week. But realistically, the average customer in Virginia spends about $125,000 to $130,000. Most people are going to add things. You're going to have a base package. This is really where you start to get in the differences. On the lowest, most stripped down end of that price range, you'll probably get something like a pool shell, a fiberglass pool shell that is installed, and it may or may not have water in it, and it probably has a pump and a filter system. And beyond that, it may or may not include anything else, even things that are absolutely necessary to use the pool. For example, patio work, electrical hookup, the cost to haul dirt away or to haul dirt in. These are all things that are typically not included in that low range if you're seeing those type of ads.
Now, let's anchor these numbers to a real backyard. This project we're about to take a look at is exactly what a lot of families are looking for. You want to get into a couple different, look at a couple different projects, and then let's talk about what the price for each of these might be for 2026. You want to get into
it? That sounds like fun. Let's do it.
I got 3 of them queued up here. Let me pick a screen.
I'm going to get my calculator out. I have a feeling I'm going to need it.
All right. Okay, here we go. So this is a D28. Looks like we've got some probably natural stone decking and natural stone coping. But this is a pretty simple project, a little bit of a ready to assemble pergola kit down here, and some basic furniture. Not a big project at all. But if you were to price something like this in 2026, what would you think? What would you say?
Well, first off, it's beautiful. Love the basketball court over there.
That would be. That's the neighbors, actually.
Okay, well, hopefully they're friends and they're playing some games together. So just off the top of my head, and again, these are we're going to talk in very general terms here. So that pool shell, the base package, the pool installed with water filter system is probably in the $75,000 range. The patio, it has a coping around that looks like a natural stone coping, and patio is gorgeous. That coping, if I had to guess, and again, coping is basically the material that borders the perimeter of the pool. So when we talk about pool coping, there's different options. This is a natural stone coping. Yeah, you can see the dark band around the outside. My guess is that's somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 for that. And the patio, if I had to guess, what I'm seeing is probably something like 850 square feet. And, that is likely somewhere around natural stones, probably about the most expensive patio option. And that could be anywhere from $30 to $40 a square foot. It could be $50 a square foot. So let's just say, 800 times 40, 32,000 for that. And they probably have some lights in the pool. That's probably another $2,000. They may have, I'm actually looking at the pump and filter system right there. There may or may not be a heater. We'll just say that there's not a heater, right?
Yeah, let's go with that.
That puts us at about $120,000.
Okay. All right. Again, this is not a very big project at all. The D28 is 28 feet long. I forget how wide is this one, 14, 15 feet wide? I don't remember how wide this one is. But
yeah, that one's 15.
15, but this is not. Next up is a project that shows us where beauty and budget intersect in some unexpected ways. It also begins to reveal some potential costs that might sneak up on your final budget.
Yeah, so this pool, we've got a C35 with textured concrete patio. And that it looks like we probably have somewhere around, I would say it's probably about 850 again square feet of patio, and that's probably somewhere around I'm just going to say 18 or $20 a square foot. All right. So we've got the pool shell itself. We're going to say that base package is right at $80,000. And then we have a retaining wall, right? So that little seat wall,
right here.
yeah. So that's done in a beautiful way. I mean, the grade or the yard kind of sloped away from the house, and you can see that retaining wall is retaining that dirt. So it isolates the space. It's beautiful. It actually acts as a seating area as well. They accented the end of that wall with a column, with a light. That's gorgeous at nighttime. So yeah, that's done in a tasteful way. That retaining wall and column probably cost in the neighborhood of about $10,000 to $15,000 would be my guess. And you might be shocked by that. You might be like, whoa, that doesn't look like very much for $10,000. Well, retaining walls are very expensive. And this is one of the areas where, and I might be overshooting a little bit. This could be $8,000, right? But it's somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an area, Christian, where we find that a pool installer who might be reluctant to disclose all the cost up front, they might approach retaining walls kind of in a way where they say, well, we know you're going to need a retaining wall, and it's going to be X amount of dollars a square foot. And, we're going to tackle that after the pool's installed. Mm-hmm. And they might know like it's going to be $30,000, which is actually not that uncommon. If you have a wall that might be, 3-4 feet tall. So I think if you're buying a pool, you want to avoid we're going to get to that later conversation again, more back to surprise costs, because technically they disclosed it, but we didn't really help you understand what your all-in cost is.
Now we're going to go big and take a look at a backyard that has everything. A lot of outdoor living space. And you're going to see how some of these features really begin to move the needle on the final cost. So talk through some of the features right here, just inside of this photograph, and let's talk about a price for this project.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you really knew you were gonna tug at my heartstrings on this one. I love this project. Great friends with them still today. So our 40-foot pool. It has an automatic pool cover. It has the elevated tanning ledge on the far side, on the far end over there with a spillway. Mm-hmm. It has a poolside retaining wall with columns, paver patio, natural stone, marble coping. If you just talking through these things, and then we're going to get into cost. So if you look kind of at the bottom right of the picture, you see where the potted plant is. That's actually sitting on a stone lid system. So when we have an automatic pool cover, the cover rolls up on a roll that's actually below patio level, just off the deep end of the pool, and that's concealed by some lid system. So the standard lid in most cases is going to be an aluminum lid, or you can use stones that match the coping around the pool, and it
kind of tough to see. This is the leading edge of the cover itself right here. Yep. So everything he's talking about is there's a giant spool under this set of stones right here. And that's where the cover lives, under the deck.
Yes. So let's start to break these down in terms of cost a little bit. So the pool base package, it's probably going to be somewhere around $80,000. The automatic cover, about $19,000. The elevated tanning ledge, it has a stone veneer around it that matches the existing columns on the property and matches the columns on the new pool house. The pool house was not in our scope, but we worked really closely with the contractor on that, and it came together really well. So the elevated tanning ledge and it has you'll see it has a thinner profile marble coping around it with the same marble spillway. So that feature is probably in the $20,000 to $25,000 range for that, including the veneer around the outside. The elevated wall with columns on the left side is probably in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. It has waterline tile.
This is just a decorative wall here. This is not holding, really holding, earth back, other than, just a little planting area. Correct?
Yeah, we had a design decision there. We could have, the soil on the backside of that is built up a little bit, but that was just a design decision. We could have removed that and done away with that wall, but together we felt like the the wall would be a nice feature. If you look closely at the columns, you'll actually see the columns have a shear descent cascade coming out of them. And so you have
Right
three
there.
shear descent cascades or waterfalls coming out of the columns. And we're actually looking through a rainfall right now that is mounted on a pergola off the deep end of the pool. So let's talk about water feature pricing for a second. I kind of shared the cost of the wall and columns. Each one of those shear descent cascades in the columns is probably in the $500 to $1,000 range. They're all controlled individually. They're all valved separately with our own individual lines. There's that 8-foot rainfall coming off of the pergola. The pergola was not in our scope. The same contractor that built the pool house built the pergola. And those rainfalls, they are all they are plumbed together. They're valved together. We obviously had to provide, not obviously, but we had to provide an extra pump so that we had enough pump power to give the right amount of flow to all these water features. And that rainfall was in the neighborhood of about $3,000, not including the pergola itself. Yeah. So the bluestone or the marble coping around the outside was in the $12,000 price range, and the pavers were in the especially in like 2026, we're going to be around $30 to $35 a square foot for that, and that matched with the existing pavers that were there.
Okay. And these pavers, these are just concrete products. This is not a natural stone.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a precast concrete paver. What's cool about this project, Christian, as you know, they actually have a short throw projector mounted on the pergola. They turn the rainfall on, and it actually projects movies onto the rainfall itself.
It is
The
really
rainfall
cool.
acts as the screen. It is so cool.
Yeah, I got to see this one running at nighttime, and it was really cool. You really could sit, float in the pool and watch a movie. The way they've done the audio, the speakers and everything around the pool, you could sit there for hours and watch TV or movies from the comfort of your pool. It was pretty amazing the way they did that.
Yeah. So let me just to close this one out, Christian. They also got a heat cool heat pump because it has the automatic pool cover, and the automatic pool cover heats the water up. So all in, this project would probably, not including the pool house or the pergola, is going to be in the low 200s.
Okay. All right. There's a lot of obvious things here to generate some. Once you see a high-end build come together, it's very tempting to just toss in a spa, and many people do, but some get caught off guard by the cost. There's a lot of obvious things here to generate some savings. Are there any upgrades possible? A spa, maybe?
Yeah, they kind of
if
went
you were
all out on this one. They
if you were
really
to
did.
if you were to force something in here, let's just talk a spa because they seem to have all the upgrades. If you did a spa, say instead of the tanning ledge, right? What would
Yes.
a separate spa run in 2026?
Sure. Yeah. So if we're in the $25,000 range for that tanning ledge, it's elevated. For an elevated spa, you'd probably be in the $45,000 range. So fiberglass spas are they're great. They are also it seems to that a lot of people are surprised when they see the cost associated with the fiberglass spa, and the reality is they're not for everybody. And so it depends on what you're looking for. If your priorities are, I want something that's beautiful that integrates seamlessly with the pool design. It can spill over into the pool. Give me some hot water and jets, but I don't intend to use it year round. That might be great. You might be a great fit for the spa. If you want it for year round use in most areas, and you're really concerned about the therapeutic value, with it being like ergonomically designed to fit your body, 50 jets, all that stuff, you might be better off going with some showroom model spa that you can kind of integrate into your project, but not that's part of the pool system.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, one more pricing angle we need to cover because these are the details that blindside homeowners most often.
And I'm going to say 120 to 130. Now, without changing a thing, this pool could cost 10 to 40,000 more dollars, and I'll tell you how. and it's gonna revolve around site-specific things and location-specific things. For example, dirt hauling. Let's say this is in a very highly populated area, and it costs $800 a truckload to haul dirt away times 8. $6,000 in dirt hauling. Now that's extreme. It may be free because the neighbor might want the dirt and you can dump it right there. Another one could be if the access lane is tight. It looks like there's some decent room on the far side of the house, but there's a chance that pool had to be craned in. Maybe there's power lines and trees all in the front of the house and they have to bring in a huge crane to crane the pool in. Maybe that's another $5,000. Chances are they could bring it around with a basic piece of equipment and it didn't cost anything, but it could be an extra $5,000 or $6,000. They may be in an area, and I'm not trying to pile on scare folks, but I think this is relevant, right? This is incredibly relevant because every site is so different. They could be in an area where they have very strict permitting regulations where impervious cover is factored in and measured, and that means the amount of water that's allowed or amount of ground cover, like this patio area, that does not let water go through. So it might require a grading plan or a engineered drainage plan, and those things could cost from $5,000 to $20,000, based on with engineering that could be required and the cost to install that system. So just right there, we've added, I don't know what we just added, but potentially $15,000 to $30,000 in expense without actually changing what you see. That's almost like we call it invisible money. But it's the truth. I mean, that actually can happen. So this is another area where, as a potential pool owner, when you're shopping around, these are the things that you need to be asking about. The permitting process, are there going to be extra costs because of the access for hauling dirt, hitting groundwater, hitting rock once you start digging? Those are other things that could cost extra. So anyway, those are some things that could be above and beyond, Christian.
Yeah, so it's not just it's probably a good way to say this would be, you're not just looking at costs for the tangible items, but what is the cost for all of the logistics to actually put the thing in the ground, getting the dirt out if it has to be hauled away, dealing with utilities like you mentioned. Does the pool have to be craned over the house if it's fiberglass? All of the things that physically have to happen in order for a pool to actually land in the spot.
Yes.
And it's a really good point to bring up. And I think you just added some very, very high value questions to the list for the homeowners to consider and toss into the conversation with their builder. So if you're looking at all of this and thinking, how am I going to keep this under control? Well, here's your answer. Not everything has to happen at one time.
So if we look at things that we have to do now, we would be talking about things that are integrated into the pool shell, that are items that are in the patio space. So in other words, you can't really add lights later. I mean, you could, but you don't want to do that. Waterline tile can be a little more difficult to add later. The type of coping, you're kind of picking that now forever. Same thing for the most part with the patio that's directly around the pool. So, in this case, the things that could be done, we could do to add later. We could expand the patio down the road, so we could build this project out in phases. So, one example could be we could stick with the same coping, but instead of doing the entire patio, we could do maybe a minimal amount on 2 or 3 sides and a little bit more on one end, just enough for some patio furniture. Then you come in and install the balance of the patio square footage and the pergola and the fire pit down the road.
When you break it down, pricing a pool in 2026 is not about guessing. It's about understanding the pieces. Everything from the type of pool, the site conditions, the materials you choose, and the features you add now versus later. Once you really know what drives the budget, you can confidently design the backyard you really want without surprises. And after watching or listening to today's episode, you might be wondering, how can 2 pools nearly side by side, 2 neighbors, have similar projects that have costs that vary from $20,000 to $40,000? Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover in the next episode. I'm Christian with River Pools. This was episode 1 of Pool Guides Podcast. Jason, thanks for your time today.